City Councilor for District 4. I am the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on City Services and Innovation Technology. Today is Monday, December 11th, 2023, and we are here today for a remote hearing on docket number 0160. Order for a hearing regarding the supplemental sidewalk clearance program during snowstorms in Boston. This matter was sponsored by myself and former City Councilor Kenzie Bach, and was referred to the committee on January 11, 2023. I also believe Councilor President Flynn was also a sponsor on that as well. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, the City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom and is being recorded. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibilities while ensuring public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. The public may watch this hearing via live stream at www.boston.gov/city-council-tv and on Xfinity 8 RCN 82/BIOS 964. It will also be rebroadcasted at a later date. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.csit@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. If you wish to sign up for public testimony and have not done so, please email Shane Pack at shane.pack@boston.gov. That's SHANE.PAC@boston.gov. For the link and your name will be added to the list. Today, I am joined by my council colleagues, Council President Flynn, and also Councilor Murphy. I am also joined by our colleagues in city government, Mike, Superintendent of Street Operations, Mike Brough, Assistant Superintendent of DPW, Daniel Neal, Director of 311, Aerosol Boudou, Chief of Staff of Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities, Andrea Patton. We'll go to councilor colleagues first for opening statements, and then we'll go to the city panel for their presentation. But first, I'll start off with my remarks. I want to start off today by acknowledging that we're here today after I was handed the torch on this after many years of hard work from former councilor Kenzie Bach. For a long time, pedestrians in Boston, we did not have a supplemental snow clearance program during the winter months. The path of cars were cleared by the city, but the path of pedestrians were to be cleared by a match of property owners in the eternal hope that Mother Nature would just melt it all away quickly. Following the model set by cities such as Syracuse and Rochester, Councilor Bach and the rest of the council advocated for high traffic pedestrian path and intersections to be cleared in a timely manner by the city. We're here today to see some of the results of the pilot programs and the feasibility of expansion. I do want to acknowledge our snow emergency team, not only the people who are here today, but the actual workers who are plowing all night in a big storm or working a bobcat to remove snow for three straight days. These workers are essential with a capital E, and they allow our city to get back to business and not to be shut down if we get a few inches like you see in some of the southern cities each year. So again, I just want to thank Superintendent Brough and your whole team for doing what you guys do. I worked in facilities, and it was just around, one building, and it was not only a day of event, but it's something that you got to work leading up to. You have to make sure that the chains on those machines are working properly. You have to make sure that the ice melt has been ordered and everything is there and conveniently located. So I understand it's like an orchestra, and I want to just thank the whole team for doing a great job. But now I'll pass it to my council colleagues for opening comments. Council President Flynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Superintendent Brough and to Assistant Superintendent Nee as well, but also the other administration officials that are here from 311 and the Mayor's Commission on Disability. So I want to say thank you to everybody. And I highlight that because and Mike's team does an exceptional job of making sure our streets are cleaned during a snowstorm, working with the entire DPW staff. But also it's important to work with the Mayor's Commission on Disability Access. It's important to work with the Language and Communication Access team as well, and neighborhood services, city councilors. So it's about working together. And that's what really makes Boston a great city, is everybody, especially during challenging times, working together, supporting each other. That's my number one point. And my second point is, well, I have two other points. If we want to expand any type of service, city service, I also want to make sure that as a council, we advocate for the funding to do that. I don't like to add more tasks for city officials to do without providing the funding. So if we're going to expand services, let's also talk about how we're going to ensure that any department that is accepting more responsibility has also the tools and the funding to carry out the orders. So that's my second point. My third point is, as it relates to sidewalks, I have advocated for young people, especially professional people in my neighborhood in South Boston especially, that take the time and shovel the pathway for a person with disabilities, shovel the pathway for a senior, get up early in the morning, help out your neighbor. South Boston is a lot of young professionals now, and a lot of them are working from home. So spend some time and be a good neighbor and help those in need. It's not about you. It's about supporting others in need. So those are my 3 points. And again, glad to be here and listening to this conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council President Flynn. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on making sure that our departments have the resources to take on any added services that were given to them. And also, I love the idea of, community residents, helping out. And something that my office does, we have a hydrant challenge where we gave out last snowstorm or last winter free gift cards to whoever shoveled the hydrant. So just kind of encouraging, that we're all in this together. Councilor Murphy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I know we started this conversation this past term, and winter is coming, and maybe we'll get snow. We didn't get much last year, but definitely want to uplift the need to make sure that our sidewalks are clear and that those high traffic areas matter, bus stops and other areas. So I'm glad that Andrea, you're here from your department to make sure that the voice of those who can't access around the city as easily as others are heard. But I do think another thing we have to make sure, what we've seen time and time again, especially with this influx of opera funding and the ability to throw money at things for a very temporary time, and that money will not be there forever, that I've been here long enough now that we've been in front of departments who have come back and said, thank you for the increase to our budget, and thank you for allowing us to hire more staff. But because there's also the staffing shortage, that there's many positions that just don't get filled. So the money's been allocated. The city, the council agrees, the city agrees, the department is happy that they have the funding. But I think an important conversation that we're still struggling with across the country, but obviously we only care about here in the city on this call, that many positions then don't get filled. So there's this understanding that a department should just be able to do it because you can see on paper that there's enough positions to have it done. So I think if you want to share any of those concerns today, or at least us Councilor Worrell, keep that in mind going forward, that we have to make sure that when we add money and supports to a department, that we continue to check to make sure they were able to fill any positions that would carry out any expectation put on them. And other than that, agree, and I do applaud. I know Councilor O'Malley was famous for his handouts too about the hydrants, and it's great, and I do appreciate it, but I think it's also important to make sure that we as a world-class city also have the funding to make sure that we're not relying on school kids on a hopeful day off to clear out, because it's important, right, that for safety reasons, that hydrants are shoveled, that walkways are shoveled, especially now with the addition, and maybe this is the meeting we want to begin the conversation. Earlier, we had a hearing on public safety grants and the concern about the bike lanes and the fire department not being at the table when these bike lanes were put in, and the concern that their ladders now don't always reach the top of buildings, and because they're further away from the sidewalk. And we have more bike paths, and we have more changes to our streets and sidewalks and parking, and it must affect your department. So if we can speak on that too, to make sure that we're also preparing for those changes and making sure that the plow companies and the people who are out there are even aware of the changes, because many of the drivers aren't aware of them, even though we're trying to learn the changes. So that's all for now, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. I'm turning it over now to the administration for their presentation. And I believe the councilors have asked a few questions, whether it was, human capital, resources, coordination efforts with the, are we at the table? Is BTD at the table when we're doing these new redesigns, and how that factors into our snow removal services? Floor is now yours.
Thank you, councilors. I appreciate the time, and I'll speak as briefly as I can, but try to answer as many questions as I can. And please, if I miss one, please bring it back up and make sure I get to it. First of all, I'm happy to be here to represent the men and women of Public Works, as well as the administration. But I appreciate you guys understanding the hard effort, long hours, and very tough conditions that our workforce works through in order to keep a city safe, running, and accessible in its toughest months. And to Councilor Murphy's point, labor shortages are what they are, and with our current book of business, if you will, 850 miles of roadway, 1,400 lane miles. That's a lot. And that's before we get into also your point, Councilor, about the bike lanes and some other, street modifications. So, I mean, I just want to really echo and just really let everyone know that it's a lot of work done by very few people who work awfully long hours. And, they can sometimes miss a holiday, and some of the best holidays we have are coming up. And, Danny Nee, who's here with Public Works, as well as Clarence Perkins, who's just off camera, Danny's colleague, we've all missed a Christmas. And these are the men and women who work hard to keep things safe. I know Ergie's here from 311 and Andrea from disabilities. Our work with Commissioner McCosh is vital. 12 months a year. There's trip hazards on sidewalks. There's things can be places, but in the winter it shows up. Right? It just falls from the sky, and we have no choice. So we work very closely with both Ergie pre-storm, during storm, post-storm, as well as Andrea and the entire Disabilities Commission to get as much information as we can get. Where it may have been pushed, pulled, snow is not a perfect game. It gets moved and has to be removed and moved other ways and other places. So there's a constant line of dialogue that goes through the Danny Nee, Clarence Perkins, myself, Ergie, Andrea, Commissioner McCosh. So that's to Councilor Worrell's point. It's not just a storm. It's before it, it's during it, it's after it, and then it's getting ahead of the next one. There's a lot of effort that goes into that. As far as the sidewalk work, yes, I think this This hearing and this stemmed from one a couple years ago about some, just some square work we were going to do, and we were going to pilot a program post-storm, and we did that. We did it in the winter of 21 into 22. That was a notable winter as we had a blizzard that saw the most snowfall in 24 hours in the city of Boston in one calendar day. We got on January 28th, we got 23.8 inches of snow. So we went into some heavy removal after that, and we rolled into our square work, which we call it, our squares and high residential, resident foot traffic areas in every district and every neighborhood in the city. I'm happy that all the councils here have actually informed that list. That's a living list, meaning it can change, it can move, something can be added to it. There is a capacity limit. These are the same folks who just plowed for 16, 18, 20 hours, like taking a breather and jumping into the small specialty equipment that we bring into the city for this event. We probably have about 40 pieces of backhoes, bobcats, Avants, a whole bunch of different things that we use, tracklesses that we use to roll out to open up these areas. But again, it's the same folks who just pushed for a while. They get a little bit of rest and then they start opening up squares. And like I said, the councils here you folks have informed us of an area where we weren't where we should be, or an area that maybe that could use some love and some attention. So that work was piloted in 21 into 22. We felt good about it. It was about 6 to 8 hours of work on average post-storm, and it didn't have to be a historic event. It could be a 6 to 8 to 10 inch snowstorm that saw us having to clear some areas. So it wasn't just the storms that show up with a name on them. It was for it was those mid-sized snow events. And we took that pilot and announced last year that it was going to be permanent, and it is. Luckily for us, we didn't have to push the button last year, and God willing, we won't have to push the button this year, but we have the teams in place. We've talked to all our contractors. They're ready for this. All of our small equipment that we own ourselves are ready. So we will be rolling out that effort again. It is not the silver bullet. It does not do the 1,600 miles of sidewalks we have in the city. I do not want to tell anyone that it does. I want to be very clear that these are targeted jobs, tasks that go into, like I said, business districts, squares, places of high foot traffic, and it proved to do a really good job. But again, it's not the 1,600 miles of sidewalk network. It's that opening up key areas, and that's what that's what we're going to do again this year. And like I said, I think in the city we talk about pilots for 25 years. Well, we threw it out after the first year. This is just what we do now. When that comes, we'll be there for it. Like I said, it's a living document in that inform us, whether it be resident or city councilor or city agency, let us know where it could be used better. Obviously, resources are our thing. Where we are hiring a bit more in our regular driving license folks, but our heavy motor equipment operators and our special heavy motor equipment operators, those folks who drive the larger trucks or who deal with the loading and backhoes, front end loaders, bobcats, we're not bringing them on at a clip that would make us feel like we can put our own bodies and our own pieces of equipment, which is why again we got great help from 10 contractors who supply in a snowstorm upwards of about 700 to 800 pieces of equipment. We're very lucky to have those 10 contractors, and like I said, they are a huge part of our post-storm action as well, and they've all bought in. They've all supplied small pieces, and just so we can subsidize what we have internally with our own pieces of equipment. It allows us to get wider, farther, quicker. The financial piece of it, the ballpark for a post-snowstorm cleanup of the squares is around $25,000 to $35,000. That's a rough ballpark. That goes into how many pieces of equipment did we actually get, how many hours did they work, was it so successful and so quick that we could and we needed a second day of it or like a night of it. That can push up the price tag, but that's only means we're getting more progress. The more money we spend there, the more and farther we're getting. But again, we're doing it on very limited resources, human capital, people who do need to go home. They do need to get some rest. So that can be a bit of a pause on that. To Councilor Murphy's point about the changing to the roadways, additional bike lanes across the city. Those have to make us think differently and plan differently. We've got a plan for those new bike lanes for this winter. Now, that plan is for the first snowstorm. We'll see how that looks at the second snowstorm. That plan will be, I think Councilor Worrell can tell you, when you're in operations, you got a plan, but then, then you find out that plan was a bad plan or it wasn't a perfect plan, so you alter it. So we are looking at those bike lanes in a way that we can keep them as open and as accessible as possible. And I always state, though, that our primary goal here in Public Works is to make sure that Chief Hooley's assets are safe and they can get around the city. Commissioner Burke's assets are safe and get around the city. Commissioner Cox can get around the city. The MBTA can get around the city. And, we want to make sure that, we're serving a lot of folks with, again, a reasonably small amount of human capital and resources. So we are stretched a little bit thin, but all these things are on our desk and on our plate to handle. We've been notified of the speed bumps that are going on throughout the city. That's you wouldn't think of that as a change by way of a lane, but it is a change by way of a driver should be expecting. Now, when he goes down a certain neighborhood, that there are speed bumps there, they can, that driver with that blade down, it won't be a shock to Commissioner Nick Grove's credit. He's putting signs up at the beginning of every street that we've added the speed bumps to. But we're also getting that plan into our contractors and our own drivers' hands, so they know before they get into St. Brendan's neighborhood, if you will, the new section in South Boston or Fenway, and they're going everywhere very quick. So that's another thing that we're trying to update, seemingly by the week. So all those things go into us trying to put together a successful snowstorm. Again, highlighting it's not perfect. Nothing we do here is perfect, most notably winter. A lot of it is reactionary, trying to get the best we can do, the safest we can make this city, and as open as we can make this city for all those folks that I mentioned who have critical, public safety emergency assets on the road. I think I got to most of those questions. If I didn't, please just, let me know.
Thank you, Superintendent Bro. Is there anyone else on the administration that has a presentation? If not, what we could do is we'll go to council colleagues for first round of questions. We'll start with Council President Ed Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you to the superintendent and to the assistant superintendent and those administration officials that are here as well. I think, Mike, you highlighted a lot of information that we were focused on, so I don't necessarily have many questions, but one question I would ask, with the new speed humps, with the new infrastructure changes to sidewalks, to the streets, is there anything that's plugged into GPS that would inform a snowplow driver that there's a infrastructure change to the road?
There's nothing yet. Currently, our provider does not have that, but we are looking. We actually upgraded. Danny will tell you, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we updated our GPS provider, and it was like going from like Atari to like Nintendo. It was a big difference. It was a big game changer. Technology is also unfolding as well that allows some other companies, as well as this company that we have, to kind of expand that, but we've yet to hit that point yet.
Thank you, Mike. I also wanted to acknowledge during snowstorms, calling your team, Mike, they've always been very responsive. They've always been there and very professional. So I just want to acknowledge the men and women of the Public Works Department. And I know they're away from their families, but they're always committed to the residents of Boston. So just want to say thank you. Mr. Chair, I don't have any additional questions.
Thank you, Council President Ed Flynn. Council Murphy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. No additional questions, just thank you for answering the ones we did put forward, and know that my office, and I know Council President Flynn, and we're here to support if the storms do come, but to make sure that we continue to just talk about those issues we brought up about staffing and others. And yeah, that we have to work together to get through the winter. So just looking forward to that work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor, we also been joined by our colleague, Councilor Coletta. Councilor Coletta, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair. I apologize for being late. I want to thank members of the administration here, Superintendent and good friend Mike Roll. Thank you so much for everything you do throughout the entirety of the year, not just when it snows. And Daniel, thank you so much for helping us. And Ergie, always, always, always with 311. Your team is incredible. I'm really excited about this. We struggled with this just given the uniqueness of my district. It's very dense. There's nowhere to put the snow in the north end. I know that Beacon Hill back bay suffers the same challenges. We instituted the Snow Angels program under my former predecessor when I was chief of staff, where we tried to help the elderly and the disabled clear out their snow, although it was a really tough program to continue because it was volunteer oriented. But it worked and people loved it. And so they were calling for this from the city. So to have the leadership of you all and then my former colleague Kenzie Bach push us forward through the pilot program, hearing that it's been successful is very, is great. And I'm very pleased about it. So just talking about the equipment and thinking about budget moving forward, I'm curious to know, there were ARPA dollars that were allocated to the pilot program. I'm wondering how that's been utilized. And then the equipment, so what is used, how many do we have, and how much does it cost?
So I'll touch on the equipment piece, and maybe Andrea, you can talk about the opera piece. But the equipment, we buy specialty pieces of equipment every year as part of the lease purchase. A piece of equipment like that can go anywhere between $75,000 and upwards of $200,000, depending on if it's a multi-purpose piece of equipment, backhoe, small loader. We have about 19 small pieces of equipment across the city, which is a really good number. Some looked at these of those old tracklesses you see. They look like mini yellow tanks. They're really good breaking through a lot of different things. Those are the oldest and tried as true ones we have, and we re-upped those, Danny, I'd say about 3 years ago. We added additional. I mean, we had some 1997s in there, and so it tells you how strong those were. So again, we have about 19 pieces of equipment that help us with that specialty work. But again, as part of that non-pilot permanent program, we added another 35 to 40. In your area, Council, you'll see a lot of Bobcats set up by the contractor down there. They're very popular down in that commercial Hanover, opening up Prince Cross and those areas. So again, we probably get to about 60 pieces across us and them, if you will, contracted and in-house.
Just really quick, Joe, a follow-up on that. So we were able to get additional resources when it comes to the outdoor dining program. Are there any pieces of equipment that could cross over, that could be used in summer months and the winter months, or is it a very specialized?
With the outdoor dining, we bought the small electric Ravo, the street sweeper. It works every season but winter. And last winter actually worked a lot because we didn't have it, meaning we didn't have snow. But no, that outdoor dining purchase was for street sweeping, the small specialty sweeper.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, yeah, the ARPA dollars, how those were spent.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Coletta. Although I'm not in the Streets Cabinet, I know the ARPA dollars were sent to the Streets Cabinet. I'm here to talk a little bit about the pilot that those funds are helping to expand. So obviously Mike's team has this new non-pilot permanent program of using Bobcats to clear out some of our more commercial areas. We do know, to your point, Councilor Coletta, that there are a lot of folks with disabilities and seniors who may not be able to shovel the walk that's in front of their home, right? Shovel that public sidewalk, which we know they are responsible for under the city's snow ordinance. So our office, along with Age Strong Commission, have been trying to figure out for a while if there's a program that we can stand up that is sustainable to assist those residents, folks with disabilities or seniors, in doing that sidewalk clearance. there's still a lot of really open questions about what would it take to make that kind of a program sustainable. To your point, volunteer programs can be really hard to sustain because volunteers get burned out, especially if we're looking at, you know, the Snowmageddon year of 2015, right? A lot of volunteer snow programs really collapsed that year because folks were just inundated with their own snow, let alone, you know, volunteer commitments that they'd had. There are also questions about how to identify residents that would be eligible, right? How are we going to evaluate their disability or their age or their income, things like that? Where are we going to find a workforce? It can be really hard to predict when snow's going to come and how much money we could promise, even if we're able to get a paid workforce. There are questions about liability in terms of, you know, shoveling public sidewalks, but what about private walkways to the door? And finally, demand. So to speak about the ARPA piece, we did last year do a really, really small micro pilot with PowerCore to sort of test what this could look like. And we contacted a number of folks who actually said they didn't need this kind of service. They had a grandkid or, you know, someone that came and helped them out, and they actually declined. So it's really hard to know what the demand would even be, and therefore to know what kind of workforce we'd need to recruit. But we're trying. We've got this small pilot. We didn't go out last year because, as everyone knows, there was no snow. So it was really small last year, but without the ARPA dollars, it was literally, we're talking like 8 houses. This year, it's allowing us to expand. And while I sort of never hope there's snow, I kind of hope there's snow just so we can test if there's something here and we've got something sustainable. So as I mentioned, it's a collaboration with PowerCore, which allows them to get some additional professional development for, you know, future jobs in landscaping that a lot of landscapers turn to snow removal in the winter. But it does also mean we have a fixed number of our workforce, right? It's the PowerCore participants. We're not recruiting outside. So it's a relatively fixed workforce that we're working with, which means it's also a relatively fixed set of households that we can get to. The ARPA dollars are expanding it beyond that 8 that I mentioned from last year. First, the ARPA dollars were used to buy some power equipment for PowerCore, so battery-powered snow blowers and snow brooms, so not using gas, not with the same, you know, environmental impact that a lot of traditional snow blowers might have, but allowing them to be more efficient and hopefully get to some more homes than if they were just shoveling sidewalks by hand. And it's also paying for some additional work hours outside of the PowerCore hours. So PowerCore is, you know, a set professional development program that's sort of a full-time Monday through Friday, but ARPA dollars will be used to allow us to expand that so we can offer 7 days a week to the residents that have been selected to be asked and then who will then opt in to potentially be in this program this year. We're still finalizing that list of homes, but we're looking at being in a number of neighborhoods and reaching out specifically to folks we know have disabilities, primarily seniors. Again, just to see as a test of, as a proof of concept, to see if this is something that we can run in the city, something that could be scaled up, that could be sustainable moving forward. Because the ARPA dollars have to be spent by 2026, we do plan to take any lessons learned from snow this year, try it again next year, and have a better sense of whether this is something that is sustainable as a program from the city. We just don't know yet.
That's great. Thank you so much for that very thorough answer. We ran this program in District 1 for about 4 years, and so there are a lot of lessons learned. I would just lean on church groups. I know that there's liabilities with employing kids, and so that's where the PowerCore comes in handy, I guess you can say. And then just looking at the staffing and public works too. I mean, hiring and promoting from within, I know, is a top priority for you, Superintendent. So just thinking about how we could create pathways for folks who maybe come in at the lowest wage that we have and giving them a pathway to get their CDL license. I'm not sure if that's something that's already happening, but just making sure that they could get in on this work as well too, in addition to the PowerCore.
And just to jump in on that, that is occurring. We are trying to create a pipeline to anyone we're hiring to get them in the seat of any truck, and then, you know, upwards as well. And would that become specialty licenses and helps with that career ladder and that growth for that individual employee to move up that ladder.
Thank you. I'll just say one last thing. I know that I'm taking up a lot of time, and we have another colleague that just joined us, but obviously my district is very dense. The North End has a lot of restaurants, a lot of people living in one place, even East Boston. So thinking about prioritization, I know that squares and corridors are at the top of the list or top tier, but thinking about the density level of populations and where they're currently at, Beacon Hill, Back Bay, I think would also be designated or categorized in the same breath here, but just to think about East Boston and the North End, and I'm happy to help wherever I can. Thank you.
Yep, we're happy to connect offline with any counselors that if you have a particular area you want us to look at. Again, because it's a really small kind of workforce, and we're probably not going to be able to hit well, I know we're not going to be able to hit every neighborhood in the city this first year to try it out, but certainly happy to chat with you about places to look at for maybe future iterations of the program if we're not already able to hit them this year.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. We've also been joined by our colleague, Councilor Durkin. Councilor Durkin, the floor is now yours.
Thanks so much, Chair Worrell. So obviously this is my first winter with the city of Boston, so I'm excited to see and get to know. I mean, obviously I know my neighborhood and nearby neighborhoods that I walk through well in terms of street, just having seen for myself what gets cleared and what doesn't. And obviously the city does a tremendous job during the winter season. It's really what I'm mostly concerned about is sort of private landlords and their inability to do some of the work. There have been a lot of seniors who are aging in place in Back Bay and Beacon Hill who will hit something or hit I don't want to say black ice, but will hit like a glassy area, and we always realize after the fact that it was private property and it should have been cleared by but making sure that our walkways are clear is of the utmost importance as we head into this winter season. So Superintendent Brohl, wanted to get an idea, what are we, and this might be a dumb question, but what are we expecting for winter in terms of how bad this winter is going to be, and what should we expect to see, and how should we as district counselors interact with the buildings that we represent, and making sure that they have the access to the resources of the city of Boston?
Sure, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you noting how hard the men and women here work throughout the winter. So there's a new Farmer's Almanac, like there's an old and a new. Everything, I guess, there's they've got us for an average winter. An average winter snowfall is about 43.5 inches of snow here in the city. Keeping in mind that Eastie and Hyde Park are worlds apart as far as snow is concerned, and the measuring, oddly enough, the snow is measured at Logan Airport, which our East Boston and even South Boston, outside of ocean effect snow, can see less than West Roxbury and Hyde Park, and there can be a delta of about 20-inch difference in that. So when Hyde Park and West Roxbury can get on an average winter 60 plus, and Eastie, Southie can be around that 43.5. So that's what they're calling for. Now, unfortunately, we're having a career, relying on what they call for. They're men and women who also work very hard. It's an inexact science, and so, that's what they're calling for. I will tell you that we prepare for winter no different than any other winter. We've got our salt piles high, we've got our contractors ready, our workforce is ready, but that's what they're calling for. We'll be ready. I mean, unfortunately, Andrew notes the winter of 2015, no one called for 109 inches of snow that year. So it'll be what it'll be. I think that, as counselors, we always appreciate the help with, like I said before, this is not a perfect game. Tell us where we weren't. Tell us where we made, where a pile could have been created. Pushing snow for 16, 18, 20, 25, 26 hours can create snow where we wouldn't want it, and it's not great. But I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that we're catching it as it falls, or politely placing it where at the end of the night as the people clock off, because no one ever really clocks off. So let us know that. Also with that, as you're seeing areas that are not shoveled, use 311. Let us know. Code enforcement. We deploy code enforcement throughout the snowstorm, most heaviest post-snow. So during the snowstorm, they're in to make sure no one's pushing. None of these landlords or businesses are pushing snow from their private driveways into the street. That's why that's why they're in during the actual event. But to the great credit of John Blackmore, they roll out heavy after the storm to ticket. They're ticketing for unshoveled sidewalks. They're ticketing for anything that that where privately snow shouldn't be or ice is. You've got 3 hours after the last snowfall to clear up your snow. If that last snowfall ended overnight, which is a dance Ergie and I do every snowstorm of when we turn on that app, that case creation type, it's 3 hours after sunrise the next morning. So think about 10 o'clock the next morning, right? I always say use the system. I tell everyone to use the system. I tell my wife to use the system. Also, use phone, email, text, let us know as well, please.
Thank you, Superintendent. And then one other question that I've specifically gotten from dog owners in my district is sort of the on certain days feeling like some of the roads are a little bit oversalted. So is there a way that we prevent against, making sure obviously there's enough salt for there to be friction in the roads, and but are there ways that we prevent against too much salt, which I know can be harmful to pets?
Yeah, how we prevent is finding out that we did it. We don't deploy, we don't throw salt for we throw salt for a reason. We throw salt to make sure the streets are safe. We should not be over salting, but again, the action of trying to keep up safe, the Athens of America and the hills we have is to make sure the roads are safe. So when we see over salting, Danny needs the first one to correct anyone for throwing too much salt. That does happen, but understand that can happen again in a winter where we're trying to make roads safe for a multitude of folks, vehicles, apparatus, ambulances, and whatnot.
Yeah, and let me be clear, I think that my impression of that is probably the fact that I live on Anderson Street, the steepest street in the city.
Yeah.
It might be the steepest street in the city of Boston. So
I would agree. Yeah, and the alternative to the dog owners would be very bad and dangerous. But it's noted. We always we see cases for that as well. We have internal conversations and we work on it the best we can every event.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. And I know I have some questions that I can follow up to with ISD around specific properties that I know in our neighborhoods don't always do what they're supposed to do, but do you have any advice for how we can interact? Obviously through 311, but are there other ways we can interact with the city around negligent landlords that don't do their part?
Yeah, shoot us an email, shoot me an email. I go back to your sidewalk email on Charles Street. Nothing has ever been so buttoned up that we've gotten.
Thank you.
Anything like that helps us. It also helps us, that code team that not just to visit, but we'd also make phone calls to kind of, tickle folks and let them know that things aren't going well.
Thank you so much, Superintendent, and nice to see you, Andrew Patton. I yield my time.
Thank you, Councilor Durkin. Few questions. One of my questions is, when I was in operation, we had, different rates of overtime. We had overtime, regular overtime, then we had snow overtime. Are our public works employee getting snow? Is there like a snow overtime rate? Just thinking of, when you was talking about, the long hours, missing Christmas, missing holidays. Just want to make sure that, we're taking care of, our public works team that's out there.
I love to hear that question. Currently, we have overtime for snow. Currently is just as regular summer, spring leaf clean, leaf and other type of overtime, except for on Sundays or if snow falls on your 7th workday, no matter what your schedule is, if you're Wednesday to Sunday or Monday to Friday, you don't have to work that 6th day to get double time. So that currently is the one difference. We are working and having some conversations, Council. I can, inform you as those go, but to kind of make sure that we're, I think, and I like the way you kind of, contextualize that question. It's just a little different. I call it blood money, but it's just a little different. The men and women are giving long hours in tough conditions. So there is a slight difference now to regular overtime. We're having conversations about something different.
We'll love that, and we'd love to, continue to advocate for that for the hard team that's working during our snow hours. we're talking about, redesigning a lot of our streets, whether it's, going from less cars. There's been street designs on Tremont Street, Columbus Avenue, Summer Street, Center Street, and West Roxbury. There's, a push on Blue Hill Ave. Are we putting, and even like just the administration in the city trying to push, the rest of the city to take other modes of transportation, which will either, require, cycling or, walking to the bus stop. Are we putting any efforts on those streets for people who might be on foot more or walk into a new bus lane, or, how, is there any conversation on, your role in street removal, snow removal expanded as we go into these new redesigns?
Yes, by way of the lanes, no by way of sidewalks. Our book of business that we're responsible for is a lot. I mean, I don't want to, and I appreciate this hearing being about sidewalk work, but I don't want to go away what we do over, 850 miles, 1,400 lane miles, hills and bridges and low points and high points and ocean effect and, West Roxbury and Hyde Park. We're currently, that's why we've got the good work of Andrea and some other folks that are kind of thinking through how can all of our work be supported, whether it be from ARPA funds, Power Core, other things to kind of make sure that the burden as we expand can be carried or overseen by some other folks. It's just I don't want to lessen what road work is and but to that same question though, yeah, by way of bike lanes and by way of anything like that, we are in the conversation to make sure that these lanes are wide enough that we can get a specialty or regular piece of equipment in there to make sure that that the widths allow us to get in and out the best we can to make sure that that these lanes of travel newly added to our inventory are also safe and accessible.
No, and I appreciate that response. And 850 miles of roadway, and it, like you said, it's not when snow's falling, but it's well before and well after snow has fallen. So whether it's Power Corp or more money to contracted services to get more people out there to help with the additional services, that's definitely something that I know myself, and it sounds like some of my counselors would definitely be advocating for, to make sure that these services are part of our snow removal services. I'm going to ask a question for 311, and this is a question I always get when it comes to like MBTA bus stops. Those non-city sidewalks. What is our, like, is there any way that we know that sidewalk has been resolved, that MBTA bus station has now been cleared?
Yes, thank you for the question. Basically, the way it works is the constituent will call us, or we get the picture through the app or the case through the app, and we'll forward that to the MBTA through an email that we have as a contact there. From there, they're supposed to email us back when they do take care of it. Now, it is an outside agency, so we can't make that communication easier since it's email. So yes and no. We will if they're able to respond. If not, then sometimes we'll just call them and follow up if we see more cases coming in that it's not being handled.
And if I could, Counselor, not as a 311 knowledge, but a general bus stop accessibility question, it's something we get a lot as well. It's great if I can go down the sidewalk, but if I can't turn and get on the bus, how's that going to help me? The expectation is that any of those bus shelters, any bus stops with a shelter, the T will clear those for access to their bus. But it can be harder in some of the residential neighborhoods where there's just a sign that designates it and there's not, a built-up shelter that is MBTA property. So, we rely once again on our community to care about our neighbors and not just do your 46 inches, path of travel, but if your property is out in front of a bus stop, to consider, as Danny would say, punch a hole through that snowbank to allow access to the bus as it stops there. we ask that the same way we ask folks to go out and shovel multiple times if they need to hit that curb ramp a couple times before the snow's all gone and melting. It's part of everyone in the city looking out for their neighbors. So there is actually a meeting the T is having on Thursday about this question of snow removal. So happy to follow up with your office about anything new we learned there.
We love that. And just so I have a clear understanding of the T's responsibility, is it just for, the shelter, or is it for actually, creating a pathway to get onto the bus?
I might throw it over to Danny if you do want to have a clarity of that, because I want to make sure I'm getting it right.
Sure. So there's on a typical bus route, like a neighborhood bus route where it's just the signs, that's going to fall to the abutters. Where there's larger stations or hubs, that's on the MBTA. There are these bus shelters that you might see, like on the number 1, the Mass Ave. That's JC Deco or Wall Deco. I forget, they changed name a few times. They do have people that go out and clear them, typically post-storm, plus or minus a few hours.
Yeah, Assistant Superintendent, I guess my question was, sometimes the shelter might be cleared, but there might be like a snowbank in front of the, on the street. So is it the T's responsibility to, make that level so that, I can actually walk, from the shelter onto the bus and not over like a snowbank?
If it's on their property, yes, or if it's one of their larger bus stops or bus station hubs. The glass enclosures that you'll see with the ads, that's on a contractor. I believe the contracts run out of property management. They do clear and allow, a spot. They don't clear the whole gutter per se. Again, depending on the amount of snow, there is a path for the bus to pull into the curb so people can get on safely.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. And
ideally. Obviously they missed some as well.
Awesome. Yeah, because I just sometimes seeing, on Blue Hill Lab, sometimes people who walk into the middle of the street instead of standing on the, in the shelter because, the snowbank is too high. My other question is on main streets, right? Like how are we working with main streets on, the clearing of squares and corridors, and similar to, how the city dispenses sunscreen community spots, has there been any consideration, and this is kind of hitting on the, human capital shortage that we have, are we thinking of, how do we get the community to help us a little bit more, right? So like maybe it's putting community ice melt buckets or dispensers that give community the tools to spread ice melt, to, encourage, lending a hand during snow removal. Have we thought about ways on, similar initiatives like that we can encourage, community playing a part?
I like that idea about the, salt. I've got 44,000 tons of salt, so a few buckets wouldn't hurt anybody. Even Danny would let that go out of the building. As part of the ARPA conversations that have gone on, and again, this is not my lane, but I do know that they've been talking to economic development, and Chief Sagan, I'd always shop about how could that be utilized there. So I guess I listed that to say that there were conversations going on with the main streets as well as some folks around to see about that clearing. But I might steal that salt bucket idea and open up a dialogue with those folks as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Just want to say thank you again, guys, for all your hard work and all that you do for the city of Boston. And I hope it's an easy winter. Although I do like the snow, I do hope it's an easy winter for you guys.
That makes two of us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
Bye now.
All right. Well, we'll now shift it over to public testimony. If anyone here to testify, please raise your virtual hands and you'll be promoted to give testimony. All right, seeing no raised hands, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.